Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for a new webinar presented by Digium, Closet versus Cloud, and where should you keep your phone system? My name is Matthew Hilton, and I am the Product Marketing Manager for our SwitchVox product line. And I would like to, again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen in to this webinar with us. We're going to start off just a little bit slow for the first couple minutes, just to make sure that anybody that happens to be running a little bit late can join us. And if anybody's having trouble hearing me right now, if you just pop a quick question into the Q&A chat panel to make sure I know that we're having some audio issues. Otherwise, I will move right ahead. So as we wait for a few additional participants to join, let's talk about a couple of the house rules for this webinar. Today, everyone is in listen-only mode, which means that any questions you have should be asked in the On24 chat or Q&A panel. And please feel free to ask any questions that you like in the chat panel as we go through. I will do my best to keep up with those as we go through the presentation, and also we will try to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the webinar. I am also going to try to make this webinar as interactive as is possible, so there will be a couple questions in here throughout the course of this webinar. So if you would be so kind as to answer those questions as they come up, I'd appreciate it. Today's webinar will be available using the same link after today's live broadcast, so you can re-access this content at your own time. You can simply follow the same link that you use, or we'll also send an email out at the end that will include the link as well. So first, let's talk about what our agenda is for today's discussion, Closet versus Cloud. So we're taking care of the welcome right now, and then we'll talk about me. Why not? I love to talk about myself, so here we go. We'll talk about why I feel that I'm the expert for today's discussion. We'll talk a little bit about the company that's presenting this webinar, which is Digium. Next, we'll talk about some of the benefits you can get from an on-premises solution. We'll then focus on the benefits you can get from a cloud or hosted solution. Next, we'll talk a little bit about how mobility can play a part in either an on-premise or a cloud-based solution. We'll give you a quick overview of SwitchVox, the product that I'm responsible for, which is Digium's turnkey unified communications solution. And if any of those terms don't make any sense, well, hopefully we'll teach you about unified communications a little bit as well as we go through. And we'll also talk about we'll do a little wrap-up. We'll have some question and answer at the end. And again, like I mentioned, we'll have some Q&A as we go through. So without further ado, let's dive right into our topic at hand today. First, we'll ask a poll question. What are you hoping to learn the most about today? Whether you are looking for some information on on-premises solutions, cloud-based solutions, maybe you just would like to know about both, or maybe you're just here to find out what I have to say on the topic. So if you would take just a brief moment here, again, we're just waiting for a couple people to join us. Just select your answer there and hit the submit button when you have a chance. We'll give that just a few more moments, and then we'll get rolling right away onto our webinar. All right, thank you so very much for answering those questions. Let's see what we have here. All right, good. So we've got a lot of people that are interested in both cloud and premise solutions. So that's excellent. Glad to hear that. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We've got a lot to discuss today. So first, let's talk about me. So as I mentioned, I'm the product marketing manager for SwitchVox, and I have had the privilege of working in various IT roles for multiple Fortune 500 and value-added resellers for over 15 years in the IT space. My previous job titles have been many and quite across the board in terms of IT and otherwise. I've been a business analyst, a systems and network engineer, a sales engineer, which was kind of on the pre-sale side of things, as well as a VoIP engineer. As a VoIP engineer, I've planned, staged, installed, managed, and supported IP telephony solutions from most of the major manufacturers in the space, with user bases ranging anywhere from 5 handsets up to 1,500 plus with multi-sites. And I've had over 7 years of experience with the SwitchVox platform from Digium, And so, as you can see, I'm not just somebody that is new to this game or new to IT, and I have worked for both sides, the enterprise side as well as the value-added reseller side. So I really have an understanding of kind of how those differentiate, and also how they're similar. And let's briefly talk about Digium. For those that aren't familiar, Digium is known as the Asterisk company, and that is because we are the maintainer and core developer of the Asterisk platform, which is the world's most successful open source communications platform. Switchvox, which is based upon Asterisk, is also a product that we manufacture, and that is our turnkey unified communication solution that's based upon Asterisk. And so where Asterisk is a platform where you can go ahead and develop whatever product you would like, whether it's a voicemail system, a full telephony system, or otherwise, Switchvox is turnkey. So there's no development necessary. You just have a simple web GUI, and we've done all the hard programming work for you. All you have to do is set it up for your configuration. And Digium has a global presence throughout the global presence. We have thousands of companies using Digium products in over 170 countries. So we're not just a kind of one-trick pony. We've got multiple products, multiple platforms, and they're being used throughout thousands of companies. All right, now I do have a question about, is this still on, from Ryan. Yeah, Ryan, if for some reason you can't hear us or see us, feel free to refresh your web browser, sign out and sign back in. Otherwise, if anyone else is having trouble, please let me know in the chat panel, and we will get going on the main content right now. All right. So let's talk a little bit about on-premises solutions. So there's been a lot of talk in recent days and weeks and months and years, and I've actually had the benefit of seeing this kind of take place over the last 15 years of my career, about people saying that on-premises hardware is passé or it's out of date. Why would I want to put additional hardware on site when somebody in the cloud could take care of all my infrastructure for me, really take care of all the headaches? So let's talk about why you might want an on-premise solution. Well, it's a tried and true technology, and kind of here are the 6 highlighted features that we'll talk about more in a moment. And so we'll talk about how some companies prefer to utilize the capital expenditure method for their business. So they prefer to use fixed costs that are upfront, and this may help them with their return on investment or total cost of ownership, in that it can simplify those calculations. It also helps to limit their monthly spend, so you buy it, you own it, and so you only need to continue to pay for the services that you need for your connectivity, such as plain old telephone service or public switch telephone network services. It helps to control your implementation, as you have complete control, or your installer and you have complete control over the design, rollout, maintenance, and even the backup and disaster recovery options. And you can also choose your carriers this way. So you can choose your primary carrier, your secondary carrier, and really you can mix and match to your heart's content. And it also gives you the flexibility and stability that you're looking for, because if you can control your LAN, you can control your voice, or you can do the "can you hear me now" test, which is basically there's one less player in the arena where you have to worry about your connection to a cloud-based service. So let's talk about these a little bit more depth. So how is a capital expense a benefit? Well, it really helps with lifecycle management and lifecycle maintenance. If we take a look at the cost of a traditional on-premises solution, now this is just a generalized chart here, but we'll look at first, there's quite a large install fee or cost upfront for any on-premises solution. So you're going to be talking about installation services, all the equipment that goes with that, any of the training, if you have back-end infrastructure that needs to be upgraded, so your network or your carrier changes, those all have to come basically before your project can get off the ground. So with an on-premises solution, you do have quite a bit of upfront cost. Now that being said, shortly thereafter, you're going to have some residual costs that carry over, so you might have some additional end-user training, maybe some additional administrator training, or maybe you You've decided that you want to implement different sites at different times, so you'll have some secondary costs that come in shortly after your initial install. And then after that, you've got your ongoing costs. So these are things like your standard moves, adds, and changes, any of your carrier costs, so month to month, any of your utility bills, cooling costs, things like that. But what you should notice throughout the duration of your on-premise solution is that your ongoing and move, add, change requests should ultimately come down to a fairly fixed rate. So you'll start to understand, based on your enterprise's growth or lack thereof, what your ongoing and fixed costs are going to be month to month, and they should remain relatively the same unless you decide or unless you have growth in your company. Now, at some point, perhaps a year down the road, maybe it's 4 years down the road, you're going to notice that you likely will have some support options that come up for renewal, and so you might end up having a little bit more of a charge, say maybe a year down the road, maybe 2 years down the road. This is going to depend on your preference, so again, you're controlling that preference based on the life cycle of the device and whether or not you need manufacturer support or support from a value-added reseller. So you'll have a little bit of blip at some point in your costing structure. And again, your ongoing moves, add, changes will continue, and you can see here the last ongoing and move, add, change. Well, maybe we've had some growth in our company, so that's expected. We've added a couple handsets, or we've added a new building. Again, the costs stay relatively low compared to the initial outlay that we had during the first two chart areas. And then at some point down the line, maybe it's 5 years down the line, maybe it's 10 years down the line, well, maybe you're going to end up upgrading or installing that equipment. So maybe you've added another site, or maybe just the hardware is deprecated at that point, and you decide, you know what, we've outgrown the equipment we have now, we want to go and do an upgrade to the newest version. So you might have another additional fee there, but as you can see, that's still fairly low compared to the initial outlay. And then again, from that point forward, you should just have your standard ongoing and moves, adds, changes. So from a cost perspective, it becomes really easy to figure out what your capital expense is going to be, and then you can utilize your life cycle management in order to control those costs. Now, if we take a look at controlling those costs, well, that helps us with our return on investment or our total cost of ownership calculations. So that same chart in the top right corner, well, it helps us to realize the actual amortized and depreciable costs over the entire life of the product or the project. And what I mean by that is, because we can have this estimated chart based on our own company's knowledge, we can go ahead and use the current numbers that we're spending and figure out the company's expected growth in order to figure out what our total return on investment time period or total cost of ownership is going to be. Part of that calculation is going to be the use, or is us using the expected manufacturer's life cycle for their products. So some have a product lifetime cycle of 4 years, some have 10 years, some have 8 years. And that will help us to define our total cost of ownership, not just up front, but over the course of many years. So 2, 4, 6, 10 years out. And part of that is we can figure out what our return on investment is going to be, because we can actually define it based on our own company growth or lack thereof, and what we determine we need to grow or not grow of our product. And so that really helps us to determine these two, return on investment and total cost of ownership. Unlike a cloud solution where you're continually paying, where you don't necessarily have a total cost of ownership because it's never finally paid off. So, also for on-premise solutions, an on-premise solution helps us to limit the monthly spend, and so we only need to pay for what we need. And we saw this in the initial chart, but let's take a look at this in a different way. So the first aspect is, well, you buy it, you own it. You control your own infrastructure. So you don't continually have to pay for hardware over and over and over again on a month-to-month basis or a leased type basis. You can make the determination of what size hardware to implement, how to implement it, and how quickly to implement. And so you really can control your infrastructure based on your own timing and your planning. Again, you can control that life cycle, so when to replace. Of course, you can use the manufacturer's recommendation every 2 years, every 4 years, or so on, but you can also choose when to replace it on your own. So let's say you're having no problems, you've purchased a phone system that supports up to 50 handsets, you're only at 25 users, and you've done your diagnostics on the unit. You find that after 4 years where they have said, you know what, it's time to upgrade, that you're still at 25 users, nowhere near the 50, so you haven't put as much load on the system. And so for that perspective, you say, you know what, I'm going to instead purchase a 1-year extended warranty on this unit and go ahead and extend the costs or the benefit of the initial hardware purchase 1 more year, and then reassess it at that time. Again, that helps to reduce the monthly operating costs because the only thing you're paying for at that point is the recurring fee, so utility bills and connections to the outside world. And like I mentioned earlier, well, you don't need to rent and continue to quote-unquote lease the equipment. So you purchase it, you own it, and you're not continually paying someone a fee for borrowing their equipment, essentially. And because of all this, we can control the implementation. So you do what you want when you want. So what do I mean by that? Well, there's kind of 4 key areas that I talk about when I talk about controlling an implementation and doing what you want when you want it. The first is the design aspect. So when you go with an on-premises solution, whether it's you or your value-added reseller or your installer, have complete control over that design. So whether you purchase a 50-unit phone system, or excuse me, a system that scales up to 50 handsets and say 10 concurrent calls, but you only have 25 users and you only need 3 concurrent calls, or you could potentially design a solution so that maybe you only use or purchase what you need. Maybe you decide, you know what, in 3 years we plan to grow into a bigger manufacturing facility that will support 100 users. So instead we're going to decide to purchase that 100 user phone system up front and save us from having to upgrade 1 year or 2 years down the line. That's something that's not generally possible with a cloud solution, but there is a flip side to that we'll talk about when we get to cloud. Next, you control the rollout. So again, let's say you have a major campus where you've got maybe 6 or 7 different physical buildings. Maybe 5 of those 6 are running their own separate PBXs, and they are running just fine, so you're not actually looking to replace those. Maybe they're fairly new. And again, with an on-premises solution, you can decide how you want to do your rollout. So maybe you decide to start with just 1 site to begin with and roll that out slowly, test the new technology that you're going to be implementing, see how it works, look for any gotchas, look for any features that the rest of the buildings might be able to utilize, and you can choose exactly when and how to roll your solution out. This is also helpful too for staged training as well. So rather than having to deal with, let's say I've got 1,000 users in my entire organization, well, I can roll it out to just a specific department or just a specific group within those 1,000 users in order to make it a little bit easier, a little bit less time consuming in order to handle for myself. Maybe I've got a limited staff, and so I can't physically deploy 1,000 handsets and get 1,000 users trained right away. Next up is maintenance. So again, we can decide what type of maintenance schedule we're on, what type of proactive maintenance we decide to use, what type of updates we use, how often we do those maintenance cycles, and we can also control the uptime and downtime based on the maintenance life cycle. So maybe I have a maintenance window that says every 3rd Thursday evening is when we have our outage window for any of our technology, and so I can say I want to go ahead and schedule my maintenance and potential disruptions to my phone system during that 3rd Thursday of the month. Versus a cloud solution where you're pretty much at their will. If they decide to go ahead and do an upgrade, well, you are stuck until they tell you it's done. That's not always a bad thing, but we'll talk about that again in cloud. Finally, you have complete control over your business continuity or disaster recovery planning. Now, there is a large difference between business continuity, disaster recovery, and backups. And for an on-premises solution, again, this helps to control costs as well as give you the power to decide how you need to develop your business continuity, disaster recovery plans. So perhaps you work for a smaller organization and your backup and recovery plan really states if there's an outage with my building, all I'm going to do is forward that to some cell phones and we will suffice throughout the duration of that outage. Other organizations want to have full-on hot spares or warm spares or cold spares at a co-location site. So their disaster plan is we cannot have any downtime for our PBX. So that means we're going to add things like secondary phone systems or solutions at our primary site, and we may even add some to our secondary or co-location sites in order to always have someone be able to answer a ringing phone. And so again, that helps you to control your implementation and your costs because you can decide exactly what kind of business continuity or disaster recovery plan you'd like. Well, you can also control your carriers with this as well. So you can use who you'd like and when you'd like to use them. So you can mix and match your traditional carriers, so traditional plain old telephone service, copper analog lines. You can utilize digital, T1, B1, E1, or otherwise lines. You can also utilize new VoIP technologies as well, so SIP trunks and the like. And you can also choose whether or not you'd like to keep your existing carrier or add a new carrier, or mix and match and do a little bit of both. And so this really gives you the benefit here of allowing you to decide whether or not you'd like to continue using a legacy solution or not. It also gives you the ability to build in some failover as well. So for example, if you are currently using plain old telephone service, maybe you've got 4 traditional analog telephone lines, but you need to scale up and you need to be able to have, say, 20 concurrent calls. Well, for your area, maybe the easiest solution for that is a new SIP trunk. But perhaps you don't have the best bandwidth or internet available, and it's too costly to bring in a dedicated line for that SIP trunk. Well, that's fine. You can mix and match these technologies so that if you ever experience an outage with that SIP trunk or call quality issues, you can roll back over to a traditional or a digital line. You're not reliant solely on that one new connection. And of course, an on-premises solution, well, it's the tried and true standard for the sole reason alone that it's flexible and stable. And because it's in your control, it's entirely on your premises, you can control the entire portion of that unified communication solution up until it goes out to the street. So by controlling the configuration, the implementation, the carriers, your backup, disaster recovery, and business continuity planning, and your lifecycle maintenance, basically, if the solution's working fine on your premises, you can determine that any sort of call quality issues therein lie with your carrier. And that provides some huge benefits whenever you do have a potential issue with a carrier. Because you can say without a fraction of a doubt that you have controlled your internal environment, that your internal environment is fine, and that there's no issues. That helps diagnosing and troubleshooting of longer term, say last mile or other PSTN connectivity issues with the carrier, because you don't have to say, well, you know what, I don't control my phone system. I don't know how it's configured to go out. I don't know how it's configured to route. I don't know if I'm hopping through a call center or a data center that's somewhere not located near me. And so this really helps to shorten any sort of diagnostic time that you might have with a carrier. Well, that's great, but what are the benefits of a cloud-based solution? So I've just spent the last, let's say, 15 minutes or so talking about how great an on-premises, tried-and-true solution is. And so it kind of sounds like cloud doesn't really make much sense. Well, and for some people it may, some people it may not. And, you know, a lot of people say, you know, I've seen the future and my data center is empty. I don't want to have to worry about on-site equipment, whether I don't have the IT staff to handle it, or whether I just purely just don't feel like having on-premises equipment for any reason. Well, you can move over to a cloud-based or hosted-based solution. And there are some benefits to those as well. Namely, they're kind of the inverse of what we already talked about. So we will talk about the benefits of a cloud solution in that it turns your fixed costs from a capital expenditure to an operating expenditure. So it turns your communication into a service, just like your monthly utility bills. It can help to reduce those upfront costs and spread them across a longer duration. It pushes all of the responsibility onto your third-party provider. It gives you the power of an enterprise solution, even for a smaller company, where you can have the benefit of an enterprise-level data center on the back end of your phone system, where you might not be able to afford it otherwise, and it has built-in business continuity. So let's talk about a little bit how those play into effect. Well, here's the chart that we had, here's a new chart similar to the one we had initially for on-premises, but showing how a cloud-based solution operates as an operating expense. So again, we'll have an initial upfront outlay of installation services, including training, some infrastructure changes, and changes to your carrier, obviously. So if you're going to a cloud-based solution, your carrier will then become your cloud service provider. Second month or shortly thereafter, you will have some residual probably, so whether or not you have some end users calling in for support as they get ramped up on the new system. But the nice thing here is you have an ongoing and move-out change cost, and you'll notice that everything remains stable once you've finished setting up your phone system. So once you've got your cloud-based solution configured the way you like it, you have all your users in place, you'll notice there about the sixth ongoing chart graph there that shows that you have fixed costs all the way to the end. And I highlighted there in blue and orange where you had some higher outlays in the previous on-premises solution. And let's just see quickly how that looks. So the benefit here is that you have a smaller outlay overall, but it does continue perpetually. So there is a point where there's some diminishing returns, but sometimes people like that, and we'll show you why in the next couple of slides. But here in the background, I've put in the light gray kind of what the additional costs were, or excuse me, the cost outlay was for an on-premise solution. So you can see up front that first yellow or orange line there shows that our initial outlay is much less costly from a get-go, and pretty much all of them are less expensive throughout the duration. However, because it's perpetual, you never kind of get out from underneath paying those monthly fees. But because those are less expensive up front, well, that can help benefit you by having less need for cash up front or less credit up front. So from an initial outlay perspective, there's less risk up front because you're not putting out a lot of money to try out a new system, to see if it works, to figure out how it's going to work for your business, and really to figure out if you've made the right investment or not. This helps to benefit smaller organizations as well as startups. Sometimes they just physically don't have the cash or credit up front to put in a new on-premises solution. So this is a great way for companies to get into a newer piece of technology without having to spend a lot up front. It's closer to a try-it-before-you-buy-it model. And that's not to say that everyone has this type of solution, but there are many out there that let you try their products before you can actually go ahead and start using it. So you can actually find out whether or not this is going to work for your organization, whether it's from a configuration standpoint, whether it's from a feature standpoint. This allows you to test out the solution, make sure you're comfortable with it before you've purchased a very large and expensive piece of technology, that you may decide maybe a couple months down the line wasn't the right choice. And of course, without having a huge cost up front, well, it allows you to focus on other projects at the same time or shortly thereafter as well. So of course, in the world of IT and business in general, you generally have more than one IT project or one large project happening at one time, or at least in a short duration from one another. And so this allows your business to not just worry about spending all of your IT budget up front and not having the ability to, say, upgrade a server throughout the year because you spent it all on your telecommunications solution. This allows you to be able to say, you know what, I've spent less up front, so now I can take some of that extra capital that I have saved for my phone system project, I can mitigate that or move that into something, let's say, perhaps an email server migration that's desperately needed as well. Well, and the flip side to a cloud or hosted solution is that you can focus on doing what you do best. So maybe you're not a telecom expert, and maybe you don't have complete control over your network. Maybe you're not a network expert as well. So those four aspects we talked about earlier, the design, rollout, maintenance, and backup and disaster recovery options, well, you can become removed from those. So here we'll see those same 4 stages, and your carrier ends up being the one that's responsible for the biggest portion of those elements. Yes, you'll probably play a part in designing and maintaining the solution, perhaps even helping to roll things out as you put physical handsets on desks. But ultimately, you are at the top of that chain. You are in command of what happens with this project. However, you don't physically have to do as much work because that's what the carrier is there for. So you can rely on their experts, their telecom folks, their years of experience, and you can gain from their knowledge, and you can sit back and do what you do best, whether that's planning additional IT projects or resources, whether you're maintaining a help desk, or maybe you're not even an IT person at all, and you just need to get a phone system in place so you don't want to be hands-on. So in that case, a cloud or hosted solution really can be extremely beneficial for you. And of course, well, smaller organizations tend to struggle with having an infrastructure that can support many large network-ready appliances, including voice over IP. And so a cloud or hosted solution really gives you the power of an enterprise backend without having to put in a high-end infrastructure. And so what I mean by that is, well, your cloud or hosted service provider has already done that work for you. They've got a high-end network backend. They've got a large data center. Multiple data centers are usually used. And they also have dedicated staff that are specifically there to help you throughout the entire process, whether that's a simple help desk to answer your end user questions, whether that's networking staff that can help work on the back end, whether that's dedicated SAN or virtualization experts to help with their platform to make sure it's running optimized for your environment. This all leads to reduced on-premises data center needs, so you don't need to even have a server rack necessarily. You don't necessarily need to have a very high-end infrastructure on your site. And so it can help to reduce all the specialty equipment that you may normally need for an on-premise solution, such as your VoIP equipment, networking, SAN, and the staff members as well. So this helps to lower your costs as well. So with an on-premise solution, you may end up needing a reseller, a partner, or even dedicated staff of your own to help you with ongoing network and maintenance and voice over IP technology maintenance. Whereas when you push it to a cloud, well, you've got all of those experts right at your fingertips without having to have one on site. And of course, one of the major benefits of a cloud or hosted solution is that it's got built-in backup continuity or business continuity and disaster recovery, in that you can go basically where you'd like. If you can find some place to plug in a phone, you can take your phone with you on the go, and there's no need for specialized on-premises hardware. And so from a disaster recovery plan, the plan is, well, you find your secondary site, whether that's a drop at your local coffee shop, whether that's at home, whether it's at a secondary site. You don't need to duplicate on-premises hardware. You don't need to worry about reconfiguration or forwarding calls to other locations. Essentially, you can just take your phone with you and plug it in, and you can go where you'd like. This is huge for companies that rely on phones but don't necessarily, again, have the enterprise infrastructure in order to set up a true disaster recovery location. And so it makes for planning for disasters much more simplistic. So another buzzword we hear throughout the telecom world today is mobility. And how does that help with an on-premises solution or cloud-based solution? Well, I would make the argument that mobility actually helps on-premises solutions get additional features, whereas cloud somewhat has this built in. But there are a couple things that we like to talk about when we talk about mobility and how it plays out. Mobility really allows you to say goodbye to your desk and work from anywhere. And so this allows an employee to work from a vacation home, from their desk. They're not stranded just at a desk, and when they walk away, the phone call goes unanswered. And that's accomplished in one of two or multiple ways. The first is what's called convergence. And this essentially pushes out your on-premises or your cloud-based solutions phone features to any device that you can connect. So it'll be just like your desk phone even if you're at home. So this I consider the next generation of Find Me, Follow Me, which is what people have been using for years. And Find Me, Follow Me in and of itself is really just a next step for a simple call forward. So with a simple call forward, the phone call goes off of your desk phone and lands somewhere else, whether that's a coworker's desk, a cell phone, home number, home office number. You have relatively little control over that. And so by converging that secondary device, generally what will happen is it gives you complete control over that call wherever it's being forwarded to. So for example, I have call convergence set up on my desk phone as well as my cell phone presently, and that's because I'm on the road a lot of times. And a lot of times I don't want to miss a phone call just because I'm not at my desk. And what I can do is I can actually transfer calls from my desk to my mobile and back and forth with a simple button press without my caller actually knowing. So because I'm using convergence, I can start a phone call, for example, on my desk phone, and if I have to leave the office in order to go to another meeting, I can simply take that call, push it over to my secondary device, such as my cell phone, and now I'm on that call still just as I was in the office without the caller knowing, and I'm on my way to my next meeting. And I can do the inverse as well. So I can start a phone call on my cell phone. Maybe I was out of the office when I started a phone call, and now I'm at my desk, and I don't want to use my cell phone minutes for the duration of this call. Well, that's fine too. I can go ahead and just use a button press, silently send this call back to my desk phone. Again, the user or caller has no inclination that that's happened, and convergence really allows me to extend my on-premises or cloud-based solution anywhere that I go to any device that I use. And it does not just have to be a smartphone. Now that being said, the secondary way that mobility happens these days is through the use of what's called a soft phone, which is basically an application on your smartphone. And a soft phone is really going to give you one more level of convergence in that it actually takes your physical handset, places it into the palm of your hand in a version that is a very similar software version to what's physically on your desk. So with a soft phone, you get much more functionality in that you tend to be able to do transfers and conferences, find or look up company contacts and do transfers to those contacts as well. You can also generally look at things like statuses. So if I wanted to use a soft phone, I could look up and see that my coworker is currently on the phone, and so I can then go and find someone else to help me with my question. And I can do this all from a simple app on my smartphone, whether that's Android, iPhone, or otherwise. So really, this adds value to both on-premises solutions and cloud-based solutions, but I mentioned that it tends to add a little bit more flexibility to your on-premises solution, only in the fact that traditionally on-premises was literally on-premises. Your options for working outside of your desk were fairly limited, and so whereas a cloud-based solution, I can simply place a handset wherever I want. With an on-premises solution, I can do the same thing, however, it's a little bit more difficult. And so by using call convergence as well as a soft phone, I can go ahead and take that on-premises solution and push it out to any user where they want to work, when they want to work. And because of that, it allows my employees to be much more efficient. No longer am I tied to my desk. I can take the job wherever it takes me, and I can be just as effective. I'm not limited to, say, transferring a call to a coworker just because I'm not at a desk. I have options to interact with my colleagues just as if I was there, much like the same way that web-based applications have taken over as well, such as email, instant messaging, and so on. And because I'm connected wherever I go, I can get and receive status and presence information wherever I am. So whether that's looking up a colleague's status or presence, or whether that's letting a colleague know what my presence or status is. Maybe I am needing to update my status. I had to take a sick day that was unexpected. Well, rather than having to go into the office and set up a personalized voicemail greeting or changing my status on some sort of whiteboard, well, I can go ahead and update that over my soft phone application or over my web user portal for my operator panel. I can simply go ahead and update my status from anywhere, and now my entire organization is up to date with what I'm doing without having to call me, email me, IM me, text me, all of that. All right, and as we round the bend here, we've got a few more questions and a few more topics to discuss. But before we continue, if you would please, we have another poll question. Are you planning to upgrade your phone system? Your answer can range anywhere from no, you're just here to gather some information. Perhaps you are not sure. Maybe it depends on what goes on in your business over the course of this next fiscal year. Maybe it's on your roadmap within the next 2 years. Maybe you are absolutely planning one. So you can do yes or definitely, depending on what stage you're in. If you take just a brief moment to submit your answer, again, select whichever answer fits the best for you and hit submit. It's always nice for me to know kind of where people are in the buying process, and also just helps me to tailor this next section for your interests. All right, thank you for taking the time to do that. So now let's briefly talk about the subject that's near and dear to my heart, which is SwitchFox, which is Digium's turnkey unified communication solution. And I promise you these slides will be fairly short, so I do appreciate it if you stay on, because there's a lot of good value here that also talks about both our on-premises solution as well as our virtual version of our appliances and cloud as well. Now, I should note that SwitchFox's cloud solutions are only available in the lower US 48 at the moment. But SwitchFox, as I mentioned, is a pre-built turnkey unified communication solution where configuration is done through a web user interface, making it extremely easy. So even if you're not a telecom expert, you can have great control and flexibility about building up a enterprise-class phone system with very limited actual telecom experience. So how does Digium compete, and how do we stand out as a unified communications provider? Well, we've got proven technology. As I mentioned earlier, SwitchFox and Digium are a global phenomenon with over 170 countries, with thousands of companies relying on our products since 1999. And the reason we can do that is because we have platform choices. So I say there's no glass slippers here, and what I mean by that is we have a number of solutions, both hardware, software, and otherwise, that allow you to either build your own or configure your own solution as you go and as you need. Part of that is also because we're not a one-trick pony. We have an on-premises solution. We have SwitchFox Cloud. We also offer Digium SIP trunking, again, in the lower US 48. And we also offer telephony cards to connect to T1s, E1s, B1s, as well as plain old telephone service. And we have a full line of phones and handsets as well. And let's see how this plays out. And I said that we're a complete solution, and what I mean by that is a complete unified communication solution, because communication today is more than just dial tone. What is a unified communication solution? Well, it is a solution that takes multiple previously generally separate applications or functions of telephony or communications, places them into one appliance or one solution. So we're not just talking about telephony here or plain phone calls. We're talking about getting presence or status information, talking about instant messaging as well as conferencing, so three-way calling and more, collaboration tools such as video chat, screen sharing, and so on. And Digium's SwitchFox solution actually includes all of these functions and features, which is what makes it a unified communication solution. And so with SwitchFox, you can focus on your business and not your telephony solution. Digium SwitchFox offers all the features that you'd come to expect from any sort of unified communication solution at this point. And we provide solutions, so we are looking at more than just providing dial tone to you. We're looking to solve your business challenges. So whether that's how to deal with an increase in incoming calls and having a receptionist that is receiving too many calls and can't function with those quite effectively as they were in the past, whether that is trying to figure out how to staff a call center and trying to figure out how to distribute calls properly to different departments, well, SwitchFox aims to help you solve those problems more than just give you dial tone. Of course, you still need to check the boxes when you're looking at a unified communication solution, and SwitchFox contains all the features you'd expect in a traditional telephony phone system or UC solution. So it gives you the ability to use traditional PSTN calling methods, so standard analog or digital trunks. It also allows you to do next generation or current generation connectivity with SIP trunks or voice over IP or VoIP trunks. Gives you access to things like visual voicemail, contacts, favorites, directories, call logs, history, and redial, all from the end user perspective, so you don't need to bother an administrator to look up a mobile phone number of someone that called. It also gives you three-way and multi-party conferencing, as well as mobility that we talked about earlier, both converged mobility as well as soft phone mobility. And so how does this help? Well, it can enable efficiency and optimize your workflow. Three of those features that really help for that are present, so you can find out whether a colleague is on a call, whether they're on hold. You can also see their status, whether they're available, whether they're on Do Not Disturb or on vacation. So this can help you if you're trying to find the right resource to set a call or two. And you can also use user-defined call rules, similar to Find Me, Follow Me, that are based on your presence or status, that can help you direct callers to from your phone somewhere else. So I can say, for example, if I'm on Do Not Disturb, maybe I want to forward that call to a colleague who can answer that call more quickly than I could because I'm on a phone call. Well, I can simply set up a call rule that says, when I'm on Do Not Disturb, send my call to my colleague. I don't have to bother an administrator to do that. And I can do that straight with a simple plain text readable statement, and I just basically click and drag what options I want onto my rule set. We also have features that help you work together, even though you are just one member of a call. Well, you can work together with colleagues and do things like simple three-way calling on every single handset. You can do advanced PIN-based conference rooms, where anyone that enters the same PIN number is automatically on the same call. The limitation here is just basically how many concurrent calls you can run on your phone system or on through your connectivity carrier. So whether if you have 4 analog lines, well, your conference room would support 4 concurrent calls. And of course, you can also do ad hoc or simple conference rooms as well. Anybody that dials a particular extension is always put into the same room. And again, the limitation there is just on how many concurrent calls your phone system can use. Of course, Switchvox includes more than just voice. It helps you go past voice and helps you to collaborate with your colleagues. How do we do that? Well, we do that through mobility, where you can have one number that reaches you wherever you are. As I mentioned earlier, with collaboration, with convergence and a soft phone, I don't need to give anyone my cell phone number anymore. I can simply use call rules and mobility and give them all my desk phone number. And anytime they call that, it can find me where it needs to. I can instant message somebody. So, well, if there's someone that doesn't know quite what instant messaging is at this point, I'd be quite surprised. But if I need to send a quick message to a colleague saying, hey, I've got a customer, they're calling about this particular they're talking about this particular invoice. They need an escalation because there's something wrong with the order. You can go ahead and alert someone beforehand through an instant message about what kind of call you're sending them. You can also use screen sharing. So rather than just talking about a subject, you can actually share your screen. And you can also do video chat as well. Sorry, unlike Instagram, we don't have any fancy filters. But in a business setting, well, that generally isn't necessary. What you really need to do is you just need that face-to-face presence. So rather than doing just audio like this, we can also showcase what's actually happening in a room or how I'm interacting with the call based on a video chat as well. And one of the best features I find of Switchvox is that there are user-level preferences that allow the end users to work the way they want, not the way the business specifies. Now, I don't mean that in a negative sense, because obviously there is going to be some level of control there. This is all permissions-based, but it does allow me to tailor my working habits to the way that best makes me most efficient. So whether that means I work from the home office 3 hours a day, whether I work from the home office Monday, Wednesday, Friday, well, I can set up my preferences, I can set up my call rules, and all of my options to find me wherever I am, whenever I am, and how I like to work. And a large part of this is through our unique switchboard. Our switchboard is a simple web-based interface that helps you control your conversation and increase your efficiency through what we call different widgets or panels. And you can have a simple widget. For example, we have one in the top left here called My Calls. And you'll see this looks very much like a soft phone or my desk phone, where I have the ability through my web browser to place a call on hold, transfer it to another party. I can record the call or end the call. And I can do this all without necessarily physically touching my phone. So if I'm using a headset, I can actually do everything right from my web browser rather than through a phone. So I don't have to learn what buttons to press in what order to create a conference. I simply press the conference button when it's available, and it will walk me through the process through this web page. Or if I want to transfer this to a coworker, well, I can go ahead and hit the transfer button there, and then I can use one of my widgets. I can bring up a widget, for example, that says my company directory, and I can simply click on transfer and then click on the party that I'm looking to transfer to, and I can see send that call right over to them without having to learn any fancy keystrokes on my phone. Of course, we have additional widgets there for things like visual voicemail as well as call queues. So if you have a call center or a small help desk, you can see stats of your call center. You can see what queue members are actually doing there. So in the queue member activity window right in the middle there, I can see that we have one user, Michael Atkinson, at extension 200, who is currently not logged into the queue, probably because they're not working. But if we take a look one line up at CJ Fiero, well, I can see he's been on a call for 5 minutes. So perhaps because there's calls in queue waiting, and maybe we have an SLA that says our agents aren't supposed to talk for more than 6 minutes, well, because I can see this information right here, I could send him a quick instant message or a little chat message and say, hey, CJ, would you mind wrapping up that call? We've got some calls in queue and we need to move on to the next caller. So the switchboard gives you really, really advanced functionality right from a web page. You don't need a special application, so I don't need to install this on my home computer, my desktop, my Mac, my Windows PC. You've got a standard web browser. You can click through a web page and you can get highly advanced functionality right from your web browser. And of course, Digium is always innovating, and here are just a few items that we've done recently with our Switchbox platform, because PBX is no longer set it and forget it. It's not the green screen box in the basement that you've installed once and it just lives there until it goes out to pasture. New PBXs require constant updates in order to get the most benefit from those solutions, and Switchbox provides updates frequently. Here are just a number of them. We just recently, last month, announced our D80, our high-definition color touchscreen phone that has no physical buttons. If you have not had a chance to take a look at that, you can look on our website as well as our YouTube videos on what the D80 looks like. It's a magnificent, bright color display, very reasonably priced, very affordable, and very, very high function. It works really well, and personally, I would want one on every desk if I could. We've also refreshed the other handsets that we put out in our series, so all of our phones now have color screens. Those are our 6X series phones. We now also support our VMware as an officially supported virtualization platform for our Switchbox product. So rather than just having to purchase an appliance, now you can actually utilize your own VMware infrastructure in order to get things like higher availability or business continuity planning based on an appliance, a virtual appliance, as opposed to a physical device. We've also updated our soft phone for iOS 10 to take advantage of the call kit functionality. We have a specific video, again, on that as well. So if you take a look at our Digium YouTube channel, you can see exactly what enhancements we have to the soft phone. We've made enhancements to our switchboard recently, so that screen I just mentioned earlier. We can now set templates as an administrator, and we no longer require Flash. So if you've looked at the switchboard in the past, I would highly recommend you take a look at our new version of our switchboard. And there is more coming, of course, so stay tuned for the latest and greatest. All right, and just before we wrap up here, how can we help you going forward? Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? If you have a question on anything we presented today, feel free to ask it in the Q&A chat panel on On24. If you have questions that you'd like to speak to a product specialist for, feel free to check off that box. If you'd like a demo of Switchbox, which is Switchbox Cloud or on-premises, both of our solutions operate very, very similarly. They're based on the same instructions. They look almost the exact same from a web user perspective. If you'd like to speak with one of our local Digium resellers, or if you'd like to become a reseller, feel free to to check off one of those boxes. And if you're just doing research, feel free to let us know that as well. All right. Thank you all for answering that. We are quickly wrapping up our time, so let's just get through the last few sections here. Q&A time. So, are there any questions that I have not answered yet that we would like to talk about? Whether it's Switchbox related, cloud-based, on-premise based, let me know in the chat panel now. We have a question: if I'm outside the US and I want a cloud-based solution, please explain my options. Well, right now for Switchbox, your only solution is to find basically somebody that has an asterisk-based solution or that's hosting Switchbox for you in another data center or their data center. Unfortunately, we just don't offer those outside of the US for the moment. There are plenty of solutions based on asterisk that are out there in a cloud platform. If you'd like some specifics, obviously, we're Digium, we're Switchbox here, so we're going to point you towards an asterisk or a Switchbox solution. If you are not interested in on-premises solutions, I would recommend you talk to our sales department, and they can potentially provide you some more information about somebody that might be hosting in their own data center a version of asterisk or Switchbox. Ryan asks, can we get the slides? Yes, the slides are going to be available. You'll receive an email after the webinar is done, and you can receive the slides via that, or you can also go back to this slide deck at any time. We'll replay this. If you follow the same link you used today to get to the live demo, that we will have an on-demand version of this. You can play it at any time at your leisure. Just follow that same link. How can we quickly estimate return on investment when on-prem becomes more cost-effective than a cloud or hosted solution? Thomas, thank you for that question. That's a great question. So this becomes difficult because you really need to have your two solutions picked out in order to figure out which return on investment is going to give you the best return on investment. Now, I make the overreaching statement that at some point you are going to reach a point where a cloud-based solution stops becoming beneficial from a cost perspective, but the utilitarianness, the ease of use, the fact that you don't have to maintain and manage it, the fact that you're not spending costs on things like HVAC, cooling, and energy, those will help you to realize, well, a cloud-based solution is just from let's see what's the right word, from an ease of use or stability standpoint, a cloud-based solution is better for return on investment. Maybe not from an expenditure standpoint, maybe not from a cost standpoint, but just from a peace of mind, from a kind of a third person looking out from the inside in perspective, that is what makes it the best return on investment for you. So to get the real answer, though, what you want to do is you want to take a look at, compare two different quotes, perhaps from the same vendor or manufacturer, maybe from different vendors, and you need to figure out what is a current quote looking like for an on-premise solution, as well as what would a theoretical upgrade look like or maintenance fees look like in the long run. So let's say I have a quote for a 100-user phone system. I go ahead and plug that into my vendor provides me a quote for that 100-user phone system. I would want to ask them, okay, well, in 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, whatever they determine is their replacement life cycle, what will the quote be to upgrade? Now, granted, their platform's probably going to change, their pricing model might change, but today, if I were to go ahead and order that replacement system, what would that cost be down the line? And so they will give you, so basically that will give you, let's say, for example, a full 10-year outlook on that phone system. And then you can do the same thing for the cloud-based solution because it's ongoing. You get your upfront costs, your initial investment, and then you can go ahead and say, okay, my monthly bill is going to be, let's say it's $24.95 per user per month. I've got 100 users, and over the course of 10 years, I do that multiplication, and that is how I get the 10-year outlook on that. So then you can go ahead and compare, say, 10 years for one, 10 years for the other, and find out kind of where the break-even point is. Is there an easy algorithm for that? Not really, unfortunately, Thomas. There are, because there's so many variables at play, depending on which solution you go with. Now, Switchbox, for example, whether you're on premises or cloud or virtual, has the same feature set regardless of whether you're how you're receiving our technology, but every vendor is a little bit different. So for example, if I go to a competitive product where maybe I just get dial tone from cloud, and to get things like conference bridging, I'd pay per minute. If I am trying to get something like call centers or after call queues, things like that, if they may charge me extra for those. And so unfortunately, there's not a real easy algorithm. It really is a little bit of manual work. You could certainly try to make something in Excel, for example, once you start getting some quotes. And our sales team actually is really good at helping to look at the big term picture of kind of what a solution would look like for you. So if you are looking at Switchvox, again, I would kind of pass you over to our sales team to figure out, help you figure out what your ROI would be. All right, so it looks like we are just about at our time. I'm going to roll through one more question, if you would, today. What topics did you find beneficial? So I like to do this. We do have webinars just about every month, and so I'd like to find out where you found the most benefit. If you found some benefit, if you would, you can select multiple options here. So please, if you found multiple sections to be beneficial, I'd love to hear about it. Also, if you didn't find this beneficial for you, if I missed the mark somehow, please let me know. That is really, really good for me to know. All right, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to submit those answers. I have one more slide deck for you. It might be the most important one for you, so stick around. Great, looks like a lot of people were interested in cloud. I'm glad I could answer some questions for you there, and some on-premise as well. Excellent. Finally, I would like to thank you for your time today. I do understand that your time is valuable, and if you'd prefer to have some one-on-one Q&A time, you can certainly contact us. For general questions, I'd suggest you contact Digium.com. Find our sales information, and if you're looking for more information on Switchvox in particular, that's digium.com/switchvox. You can reach me. My email address is listed there. And if you're looking for some real-time information on what Switchvox has to offer, what the VoIP industry is up to, feel free to follow me on Twitter, which is VoIPGuy_MH. And coming up next month, we'll be at Channel Partners in Las Vegas. If you ever need an excuse to go to Vegas, we will be there. Digium will be at booth 243. We'll be under the big Digium sign, so feel free to come find us there. And we are also doing a lot of web content now, video content as well. So feel free to look at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/user/Digium. And again, if there are any questions that I missed, feel free to email them to me. We'll go ahead and try to answer them over email, or we'll get you in touch with one of our sales reps or partners. So again, thank you very much for your time today. I hope you found it valuable. I know that I enjoy presenting this topic to you guys. And with that, we will close out the webinar. Thanks again, and have a good rest of your day.